Hello and welcome back to Introduction to Enhanced Google Analytics by MashMetrics. This is tip number 6, using segments. Since we're halfway through the course, let's just do a quick summary of what we've learned so far. The first tip was the enhanced Google Analytics differences, such as the bounce rate, time on site, and of course all the new goals and custom reports you have. Tip number 2 was how to utilize those goals to try to find some opportunities within your website. Tip number 3, how to navigate around Google Analytics. Tip number 4, what reports to lean on. Tip number 5, we introduced our great looking dashboards. And that brings us to tip number 6, using segments. So we think you're truly ready to impress your boss now. As you might have realized, Google Analytics is really all about comparing and contrasting. This of course can be done by date range, might be comparing and contrasting between channels, or even the various pages on your website. But sometimes we can use those standard reports to do this, and we can also use those secondary dimensions we learned in the previous tips. But how about if we want something a little bit more, like how do mobile users differ from desktop and tablet users? Now, simple questions like this, sometimes we can use secondary dimensions to explore. But what if my question were more about overall activity? Segments are used in order to look at that activity as a session, such as all users from the Americas or users that scroll down half of a page. These are things that you can't really use secondary dimensions for, and you also might want to compare and contrast between those different behaviors. Let's go ahead and take a quick look. Now, let's review segments in a little bit more detail. You'll find segments at the very top of the reports. It's obviously defaulted to all users, but you can click the plus sign to choose between some custom ones that we've created or ones that are already present in everybody's Google Analytics. You'll also notice that it quickly tells you the percentage of your users or the sessions that involve that particular session or segment. Here at the bottom, again, we can see that percentage of total. If it's a ratio, you'll also see how it's performing either better or worse than the actual overall average. This can become very, very valuable. Underneath each of the primary dimensions, you'll notice each of the segments as well, breaking that down. In this example, we can quickly look to see what the differences of behavior are between our new and returning visitors, as well as tablet, desktop traffic, and mobile traffic. We can quickly see that if users are using a tablet or a desktop and they come back to our website, they're much more engaged or spending a great amount of time. Now, for this particular site, that might be because they're coming back to the article and they're actually cooking the recipes that might be on the website. You'll notice, even if I return, I'm still a lot less likely to spend a lot of time using my mobile device. These are great things to keep in mind as you start showing up interstitials or pop-ups based upon people using mobile or desktop traffic. If we take a look at our acquisition, all traffic, and channels report, the first thing you may notice if you're following along is that the segments actually stay applied. So unlike secondary dimensions or other things, you can quickly transfer between report and report and still see those segments. If I scroll down, I'll see my breakdown by the various channels coming to my website. Here I see a big gap between mobile traffic and my tablet desktop traffic. People like to consume social media on their mobile device. Now, let's go ahead and use our on-page engagement goals to see if we see any changes there. Here I can see a dramatic change, of course, in my scrollability. We determined that earlier, but also how long people are spending on the pages. If I scroll down, while not a lot of people are coming from my other campaigns, they sure are spending a heck of a lot of time. That might be an area where I might want to grow my impressions and spend a bit more money. Now, if you've made it this far, we think you're ready to really get dirty with data. You can also, of course, create your own custom segments. You can notice if you press the plus sign, we've done this several times. In order to install these within your own reports, you can go to our custom Google Analytics library. There's, of course, a link at the bottom of this page. Now, while we could choose from the list that's already there between the custom ones that MashMetrics has created or system segments that are already included, here you'll notice we selected mobile traffic and tablet and desktop traffic. I might want to create a completely new one. Let's go ahead and click on New Segment. As you can see, there's little limitations on how you can create segments, from various demographics, the technology people are using, or even behavior on the websites. If you just ran a recent campaign, you may even want to use date of first session. Set it to your campaign date and see how many people visited once, twice, or many times since that particular time. We have traffic source segments, but let's go into conditions for now. Let's say, because I'm using adjusted bounce rate, I actually want to segment users on the literal bounce rate, or when my page views are equal to 1. Now, while we've already created this custom segment, let's walk through how to do that here. First, you have the dimension or metric you'd like to measure. Here, we want to measure page views. So I type in page views in the search and simply select that measure. I want it to equal this first selection to 1. Now, as I do this, you'll also notice you have a preview window of how many users and how many sessions that included. You can notice 84% of my users are only seeing one page view per session. Now, what I might also want to do is find out how many of my actual users themselves, because they might come back. So I change that to users with page views per user equal to 1. You can see it decreases a bit to 77%. I'm going to change my title here. Users page view equals 1. And go ahead and save this. You'll then see it within the custom area that you've created. Now, I may want to create all kinds of variations, so I'm just going to copy this. And this time, I want to see users with more than 3 page views. You can see it kept my users, the page views. I'm going to create or change it to greater than. You can see this is a very small segment, but of very well engaged users. Let's go ahead and save this again. Now you can only add 4 segments. You'll notice the plus sign has disappeared, and these no longer make sense. So I can click on the little caret arrow and remove those old ones. And again, I can see my behavior difference between users that only saw 1 page versus users that have seen 3 pages throughout their experience. Now, here's where it gets really cool, but we'll try to tame ourselves. We've been creating segments based upon activity that's already being collected, or page activity. We can also create segments on all the really cool events that we collect as well. Let's create an example of users that have actually clicked on one of our outbound links. Click on New Segment. Users clicked. And under conditions, I'm going to use the event category. Now, of course, you can reference your events report by going into behavior, events, top events, and seeing what the overall categories are. Here we'll notice it's called outbound link click. So my event category here will contain outbound link click. You'll also notice it may go ahead and pre-populate it based upon data that's already been collected. And this includes almost 7% of my users. I like to also prefix a lot of my segments. You might want to call it my custom. And press save. I'm sure your imagination is going wild on other ways that you can use these, but again, feel free to start exploring by using our custom Google Analytics library. In fact, that's exactly what tip number 7 is going to cover, using our custom report library, how to download, add them to your profiles, and other details. Thanks, and we'll talk to you next time.